They told me the air was thinner out here because of the elevation. That's why I couldn't sleep. Why I kept waking up with dry lips and a tightness in my chest. But I've lived in New Mexico all my life. I know the difference between altitude and dread. I wasn't supposed to be here this long. I was only supposed to repair a damaged transmitter near Arculeta Mesa. 3 days max. Quick job. Simple static interference. Or so they said. Government contract. Good pay. No questions. But questions came anyway. It started with a sound. Low, pulsing. Like a heartbeat. Except it wasn't mine. The static on the equipment wasn't random either. I could feel it before I heard it, the same way you feel a thunderstorm in your teeth, or a migraine in your bones. The signal wasn't just noise. It was coded, layered, intelligent.
I don't know why I recorded it.
Maybe some part of me already knew it was more than just feedback. Maybe some part of me wanted to be haunted.
As I played it back that night, the pulsing had changed, almost imperceptibly, like something was adjusting to my presence. Then beneath the rhythm came a sound I haven't told anyone about until now.
A voice, not speaking English, not speaking anything I could trace. But it was a voice, alive, wet, desperate. At 10:47 a.m., the cabin lights flickered. I hadn't touched anything, and outside, past the dirt road and the scattered junipers, something flashed behind the trees. Not lightning, not headlights, a bluish flicker, like static on a dead TV screen, but it was coming from the ground. The next morning, I hiked back to the transmitter to double-check my wiring. Everything was in place, except the signal had changed again, clearer, sharper, and the voice was louder now. I started asking around. Locals in Dulce don't like talking about the mesa, not directly. They'll joke about cattle mutilations, UFOs, and little gray guys, but it's all just noise to mask the fear. If you push too hard, they go quiet. Their eyes glaze over like they're staring into something they'd rather forget. But I'm not them. I was raised to believe every system has a flaw, every wall has a weak spot. And if you listen close enough, you can find the seam. And I found it. 3 miles west of the mesa, there's a dry riverbed that hasn't held water in decades, but on the satellite maps, it shows as a live stream, fresh water, green edges. That's not just a cartographic error. That's a deliberate mismatch. Somebody wants you to look one way while something else is happening underground. That's when I noticed the second signal, buried deeper, weaker, pulsing every 13 minutes, almost like a beacon. I triangulated its origin. It came from beneath the dry riverbed, roughly 800 feet down. I filed a report with my contractor. No response. Tried again. No answer. Next day, my access codes were revoked. And then came the knock. 2 men in suits, clean, pale, quiet. Not FBI, not military, just wrong. They didn't show badges. They didn't make threats. They just said, "You've completed your contract. Time to go home." But I didn't leave. Instead, I moved my gear to an abandoned ranger station 6 miles north, where I still had power, a functioning transmitter, and no one watching. That was 5 days ago. Since then, the signals have intensified, and the voice speaks in patterns. Now, it's not just sound, it's language, and I think it's learning how to use mine. I haven't slept properly in 2 nights. Every time I drift off, I hear it, that voice, humming like it's trapped inside my skull. Sometimes it whispers numbers, sometimes it cries, and once it laughed. I've stopped trying to decode it logically. Whatever this is, it's older than our machines. It's deeper than our maps. It doesn't want to be found, and yet it's reaching out as if it knows I'm the only one still listening. This isn't about faulty wires. This isn't about frequencies. Something is down there. Something that remembers. Something we buried and forgot. And now it's waking up.
I'm not sure how much longer I'll have power out here. Or time.
But as long as I can transmit, I'll keep recording everything. Because someone needs to know the truth about Dulce. And if I disappear, you'll know where to start digging. The signal changed again last night. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. It began with the same pulse. Slow, deliberate, like the heartbeat of something too large to be alive. But then, without warning, it cut to silence. Not static. Silence. Dead air. For 11 full seconds. And then a voice, clear this time. Still broken. Like it was forcing itself through some kind of interference. But this time it used words. Mine, it said. You found me. 3 words. That's all. And yet, I've never felt more terrified in my life. I rewound the tape over and over again, trying to convince myself it was interference, some rogue frequency, a trick of exhaustion. But it's not. It was a response. Something is talking back. I spent the day tracing older recordings from the tower's backup system. Found a series of strange transmissions dating back months, maybe even years. Most are corrupted. But one fragment stood out. It was a voice, low, panicked, in Spanish, male, maybe 30, 40 years old. Hard to say. The message repeated 3 times.
No es un laboratorio. No es una base. Es una jaula.
It's not a lab. It's not a base. It's a cage. He was crying when he said it. And then the tape cut off mid-sentence. I don't know who he was, but I know what he meant. They're not building weapons under Dulce, like they're holding something, and I think it's starting to get out. This evening, I went back to the dry riverbed, brought a small ground-penetrating sensor I modified years ago for geology fieldwork. I knew it wouldn't read deep, maybe 50 or 60 feet max, but I just needed confirmation of what I suspected. I didn't get depth. What I got was heat. The scanner picked up a consistent thermal signature, stretching in an arc, like a massive tunnel system, still active, still warm, and at the center, a core reading that spiked off the charts. The unit overheated in less than 2 minutes, and shut down completely. Whatever's down there isn't dormant. It's alive, it's moving, and there's more. So when I got back to the cabin, I found something outside the door, not left, placed carefully, deliberately. It was an envelope. No name, no markings, just a folded map inside and a sticky note with a single word written in black ink. Level 7. That phrase hit me like a gut punch.
I've heard it before. Late-night forums, declassified reports that were always accidentally deleted, whispers about levels beneath Dulce Base. Not 1 or 2, 7.
And level 7. That's where the stories got quiet. That's where people disappeared. The map was hand-drawn, rough but specific. It showed access points around the mesa, service shafts, hidden elevators, supply tunnels. Most were marked with red X's. One remained unmarked. I scanned it for hours, comparing it with public geological surveys. Only one location matched. A narrow canyon wall with a false rock face, the kind used in Cold War bunkers to mask entrances. I'll hike there tomorrow. I know how insane this sounds, but I can't stop now. I've come too far, heard too much, felt too much. I need to know what's beneath me. I need to know why I can't stop dreaming about hands that aren't mine, pale thin, with too many joints pressing against glass from the inside. And then there's the radio. It won't turn off anymore. Even unplugged, even gutted. The damn speaker crackles every 13 minutes. Without fail, always the same tone. Always the same phrase. You found me. Whoever left that envelope knows what I'm hearing. Or maybe whatever's down there sent it. If that's true, if it can reach me from inside the ground, then this place isn't just dangerous. It's intelligent. It's watching. And now, someone else knows that I know. Tonight I caught movement outside the cabin. 2 figures standing still, facing the walls, not the windows, just listening. They didn't knock. They didn't speak. They were gone when I opened the door. No footprints, just the smell of ozone and rust. I've started transmitting this log on all frequencies. Maybe someone out there is still listening. Maybe someone's been here before me and made it out. But I doubt it. If this ends like I think it will, if my voice cuts out suddenly, just remember, it was never just a myth. It was never just a story. And level 7 is real. I left at sunrise, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't want to find out what would happen if I stayed. The envelope, the map, the voice, the figures outside, everything was converging, and it all pointed to one place, that unmarked spot on the map, carved into the canyon wall, less than 4 miles east of the old ranger station. I took only what I needed, a flashlight, backup batteries, the signal tracer, my recorder, and a small firearm I hadn't touched in years, not because I thought it would help, but because empty hands feel worse. The hike was brutal, not because of terrain, but because the signal started again halfway through. Not in my radio, in my head, the pulsing hum, that awful heartbeat. Only now, it wasn't coming from outside. It was behind my eyes. Every step closer, the rhythm got stronger, like I was walking deeper into a song I couldn't stop hearing. And then I found it. The canyon was unremarkable, dry, sun-bleached, littered with rocks and twisted roots. But one wall was wrong. Perfectly flat, unnaturally smooth, like it had been poured instead of carved. And in the center of that wall, a rock, except it wasn't. It looked like a boulder at first. Oval-shaped, matte gray, streaked with desert dust. But there was no weathering, no cracks, no wear, no insects, nothing. I touched it, and the humming stopped instantly, like someone had cut the wire. In my mind, the silence was crushing. A step back. The hum returned. Forward. Gone. Back. Returned. It was a switch, a barrier. I searched the surrounding area and found 3 tiny metal prongs sticking out of the sand, half buried. I cleared the dirt and realized they formed a triangle, and in the center of that triangle, another rock, smaller, smooth, circular.
I picked it up.
It was warm. I don't know why I placed it against the false boulder. Instinct. Maybe. Or something closer to compulsion. The rock pulsed once. Then again. A third time. And then the wall opened.
No sound. No dramatic creak. It just shifted, like sliding glass, revealing a tunnel carved into the earth. Not a cave. Not natural. The walls were metal, brushed steel, or something colder. Seamless. Impossibly clean.
There was light inside. Dim, pale blue, like the glow of old CRT monitors. It stretched into the darkness in a perfect line, vanishing into shadow. I didn't step in. Not yet. I did what I always do. I recorded. I stood at the threshold and spoke into the mic. This is entry log 3. Timestamp. Irrelevant. I've located what appears to be a man-made or non-human-made access point leading into a subterranean facility beneath Arcueta Mesa. The entrance was disguised behind a material not consistent with local geology. I've opened it using a stone. I don't understand how. I paused, and then I said something I hadn't planned to. I think it wanted me to find it. And then the light inside flickered. Not a power issue, not a surge. It was more like something inside was blinking. Not light from a bulb, but from a source moving through the tunnel. I backed away, slowly, and the door began to close. Smooth, silent, like a lid sealing a secret. I didn't re-enter. Not yet. I marked the spot with the transmitter beacon, tuned to the lowest possible frequency, set to broadcast a ping every 30 minutes. It'll help me locate the entrance again, if it doesn't move. And yes, I said if, because I've read enough, seen enough, to know that places like this don't follow the rules of geography. What's here today might shift a few feet by nightfall, especially if it knows I've found it. When I returned to the ranger station, I found the cabin door wide open. Nothing inside was taken, nothing destroyed, but every drawer had been pulled out, every object placed upside down. My tapes were untouched, but rearranged oldest to newest, perfectly aligned. They were telling me something, or mocking me. Maybe both. One tape was missing, not a recording, a blank, unused, sealed, gone. Why steal silence? Unless they're planning to use it. I've been hearing voices again, even with the radio off. This time, it wasn't the "you found me" whisper. This time, it said, "Don't go alone." I don't know if that's a threat or a warning. Either way, I'm going back tomorrow. Not because I'm brave, because it's too late not to. This story isn't just mine anymore. It's in the air now. In the wires. In you. If you're hearing this, if this transmission gets out, then remember, some doors don't open for curiosity. They open for hunger, and I think this one is waiting to be fed. I left at first light. Again.
This time I packed heavier.
3 light sources, a full recorder with backup memory, a radiation badge, just in case, and a single syringe of epinephrine.
I don't have a medical condition, but something told me I might need to wake up fast.
The stern key still worked. When I pressed it against the false boulder, the wall slid open again. Same silence, same breathless efficiency. No alarms, no signs, just a tunnel, waiting. I stepped inside. The temperature dropped instantly, from desert dry to morgue cold in seconds. I could see my breath. The air wasn't stale, it was sterile. The floor under my boots wasn't concrete. It could give slight, but enough to feel like I wasn't walking on stone or metal. More like dense rubber, dull gray, soft as cartilage. The hallway stretched ahead for maybe 30 meters. Then it opened into a larger chamber, octagonal, about the size of a freight elevator lobby. The walls were lined with panels, none labeled, but each glowing faintly with that same cold blue light. Some pulsed, others flickered like they were waiting for input. I didn't touch them. Yet, I left the transmitter beacon on the floor, turned to ultra-low frequency, just a whisper, enough to find my way back. Then I noticed the smell, not rot, not ozone, metal, but not just metal, iron, heavy and bitter, like a nosebleed you can't stop. I followed it through the only corridor that led deeper The lights overhead were embedded, flat and seamless, almost biological. The further I walked, the more they seemed to adjust to my presence. Not brighter, not flickering, just aware. The walls began to curve, not like architecture, but like anatomy. I tried not to think about it too hard. At 46 meters in, I'd found the first door, if you could call it that. The circular slab of material I couldn't identify. Translucent, semi-reflective, like polished bone underwater. No handle, no mechanism. Just a faint outline of a handprint in the center. Too small to be mine. Too long. I pressed my palm against it anyway.
Nothing.
Then I held up the stone, the one that opened the outer wall. The door shimmered. Not opened, shimmered, and then retracted, melting into the frame like liquid glass. Beyond it, darkness. I hesitated. Every instinct in me screamed to turn around, to leave, but that voice, the one from the night before, echoed again, faint and broken, in the back of my mind. Don't go alone. Too late. So, I stepped through. The room beyond was round, silent, empty, except for the walls. They were lined with containers, pods, maybe cylinders stretching from floor to ceiling. Each one sealed in a kind of translucent membrane. Some were empty, some were not. The first occupied one I saw contained something humanoid. Vaguely, it had arms, yes, legs, a torso, but the proportions were off. Elongated limbs, thin, wet skin, grey-blue, and veined like wax. Over wires, the head was too large, and the eyes closed. Thank God, were sunken into sockets that looked carved rather than grown. There was no breathing, but a tube ran into its neck, pulsing faintly. The pod was marked, not with writing, with scratches. A series of lines, 7 vertical, 2 horizontal, and just below them, a print, not a fingerprint, a handprint, burned into the surface, too big to be human. Yet I recorded everything, every sound, every reading, every reaction. I don't know who I'm recording for anymore. Myself? The world? Some future version of me who might not remember any of this. Or maybe just someone who comes after. The deeper I went, the more pods I found. Dozens, then hundreds. Some were shattered, empty, fluid, dried on the walls. One had something still alive inside, twitching softly, like it was dreaming underwater. I think it was dreaming about me. At the far end of the chamber, I found another door. No handprint this time. Just a symbol, a triangle within a circle, bisected by a vertical line. I've seen it before. It was on the envelope that held the map. I placed the stone against it. This time, nothing happened. But behind me, one of the pods hissed. Not burst, not shattered. Hissed, like a seal breaking. Fluid spilled across the floor, thick and dark, more like ink than water. The body inside didn't move, but the eyes opened, black, full, not reflective, absorbing, like staring into a hole in the world. Why froze? Not from fear, from recognition. I'd seen those eyes before, in dreams, in the mirror. I don't know how, but I had. Then the eyes closed again. The pod sealed itself. The fluid began to refill, like it was never meant to be seen, like it was correcting itself. I backed out, slowly, carefully.
I didn't run.
Not yet. Reached the octagonal chamber again. Everything looked the same, but the beacon was gone, and the door was no longer open. I'm not trapped, but I'm not alone either. Something down here knows I'm here. And worse, it remembers me. I retraced my steps, or tried to. The hallway back to the entrance was longer than before, wider. The blue lights had dimmed, flickering in irregular patterns, like a heartbeat with arrhythmia. I walked faster, turned a corner. I didn't remember turning before.
That's when I saw it.
A photo, framed, mounted on the wall, out of place in every possible way. An old black and white image, not futuristic, not sterile, just a simple portrait. 3 people, my parents, and me, age 5.
I stared at it for a long time. I hadn't seen that picture in years. Not since the fire. It burned with everything else from my childhood. There's no way it should exist.
Not here, not now. I reached out to touch it. The moment my fingers brushed the glass, the hallway shifted. Not dramatically, not like in the movies, just subtly. The walls curved, the temperature rose, the scent changed, from sterile cold to cinnamon. My mother used to make tea with cinnamon sticks on rainy days. I hadn't thought about that in decades, and suddenly it was all around me. The lights above flickered, not blue anymore, but warm, amber, faint, like a childhood bedroom lit by a nightlight. I whispered, "No," out loud, without meaning to. The hallway ahead was now lined with more frames, photos, all of me, different ages, different places, none of which should exist. One showed me at 10, holding a dog I never owned. Another, me, standing beside a man I've never met, wearing a military uniform, smiling like he knew me. And then there was the final photo, still in black and white, but wrong.
It was me.
Not younger, not older,
Now,
wearing the same clothes I had on in that moment, standing in that same hallway, only my eyes in the photo were gone, erased, 2 perfect circles of black. I stepped back, and all the lights cut out, instant, total, dark. They couldn't move. I didn't breathe. Somewhere ahead, something shifted, not footsteps, but movement, wet, slow, like fabric, dragging across damp tile. I fumbled for my flashlight, clicked it on. The hallway was empty again.
No frames.
No lights, no scent, just steel, cold, silent. I walked forward, slowly, measuring each step, counting them. At 48 steps, I reached another chamber. This one wasn't round or symmetrical. It felt natural, uneven, like a cave. The walls here weren't metal. They were raw, textured, dark stone, almost black, veined with thin pulsing strands of blue light. Not wires, not fiber optics, beams. I don't know how else to say it. The walls were breathing, not visibly, not cartoonishly, just enough that the air shifted rhythmically, like the space itself was alive. In the center of the room stood a chair, not a control station, not a desk, just a chair, metal, bolted to the floor, with restraints on the arms and legs. I approached it. Slowly, beneath the chair was a drain. That was the first time I seriously considered leaving. But then the lights pulsed again, and the voice returned. Not in my ears, not in my head, in the room. So we watched you become, or turned. Nothing there. We gave you the idea of your father. I don't know what that means. I don't want to know what that means. The walls brightened. Blue veins, glowing harder now, pulsing in time with the voice. We placed the dream in your spine. I stumbled back toward the entrance, but there wasn't one. The path I came from had closed, or vanished. There was only one door now, a round one, like before. But this one had no handprint, no triangle, just a mirror. I stared into it, and I didn't recognize the reflection. It was me, but aged, gaunt, pale, eyes sunken and trembling, like I'd been down here for months, not hours. I reached toward the mirror. The reflection didn't move, and then it smiled. I screamed. I don't remember doing it, but my throat still burns from it. The mirror dissolved. Behind it, stairs, descending, always down. I had a choice: stay in the breathing stone chamber, or follow the only path left. So I did what I've always done. I kept moving forward. If you're hearing this, I need you to understand. This place doesn't obey physics. It doesn't obey time. It doesn't even obey memory. It uses memory, and whatever's below these stairs,
Knows who I am.
and worse, it may have built me. I don't know how long I've been descending. The stairs twist in on themselves like a spiral that doesn't want to end. They're too smooth, too clean. No dust, no wear, no human footprint. I tried marking the wall with a blade. The scratch vanished within seconds, like the place healed itself. No sense of depth, no sense of distance, just cold and gravity. And the sound, not voices, this time. A low mechanical hum, like an engine powering something impossibly large, muffled by layers of stone. Every now and then, it's broken by what I can only describe as exhalations, long, wet, living. Eventually, I reached a landing, flat, narrow, silent. The air was warmer now, not comfortable, humid, dense with something invisible, but heavy, like breathing inside a closed mouth. At the far end of the landing, another door. This one wasn't sealed. It was open, slightly, like someone had walked through it and left it ajar, just enough to say, "You can come in if you're ready." I wasn't, but I went in anyway. The room beyond was dark, not pitch black, but dim enough that every shape was guesswork. I swept my flashlight across it. Cells lining the walls. Not jail cells. Not even glass chambers like before. These were hollowed out alcoves in the stone, about 7 feet tall, 5 feet wide, some empty, others not. Inside them were figures, motionless, upright, wrapped in some kind of membrane, thin, flexible, pulsating faintly like lungs behind flesh. Their faces were obscured, but their outlines were human or close. One had arms too long, another no visible head. A third had 2 torsos fused into one. None of them moved, but they were alive. I know this because I could hear them, not breathing, not crying, broadcasting, not in words, not in sound, just pressure, like each one was screaming behind glass, not at me, but into me. And the worst part, I recognized one of them, not by name, not by face, by feeling. It was the same pressure I'd felt in the first broadcast, the original pulse that brought me here, the same rhythm, the same whatever that was in there, sealed in organic plastic and buried under a mile of earth. The voice I heard weeks ago, the one that said, "You found me." I dropped the recorder. Reflex. My hands just gave out. The clatter echoed like a gunshot, and every part in the room twitched at once. A silent, collective jolt, like sleepers flinching in unison. One of the membranes split open, no sound, just a wet peel, like separating old adhesive. And the figure inside stepped forward,
Not walked.
floated, a few inches off the ground, limbs limp, head tilted downward. No eyes, just smooth skin. No features, not erased, but never present. It reached toward me. Not fast. Not violent. Slow, gentle, like it didn't want to hurt me.
I couldn't move.
Its hand hovered inches from my chest. Not touching, vibrating slightly, like it was caught between frequencies. And then it shook. Not the whole body, just the hand, trembling faster, harder, until the vibration became a hum. And the hum became a frequency. I could feel it was inside my skull, and I remembered something that never happened. A lab, white walls, a child strapped to a chair, needles in the neck, a voice saying, "The host has accepted phase 3. Then it was gone. The figure collapsed, crumpled into a heap of wet limbs and membrane. Lifeless, discarded. I turned to run, but the door I entered through had sealed. No handle, no seam, just a new message, glowing in faint red text across the wall. Level 7. Observation. My legs barely held me. I staggered to a corner and sat, tried to breathe, tried to make sense of the memory, but I couldn't, because I'm not supposed to remember it. They made sure of that, whoever they are.
I hit play on my recorder, just to hear a voice that was mine.
But what played back wasn't what I said. It was a loop, a whisper, over and over. Return to the beginning. Return to the origin. Return to the cell. I dropped it again. I'm writing this with hands that feel like they're borrowed. If you're hearing this, know that the cells aren't just containment. They're mirrors. They show you who you were before the edits, before the lies, before the voice in your dreams whispered, "You're someone else now." And if that's true, then I'm not the first one here. I might not even be the first me. I don't remember falling asleep,
But I woke up on the floor of the observation level, my cheek pressed against warm stone.
Warm.
The etal snapped everything back. The walls weren't just breathing anymore. They were feverish, alive, accelerated, like the base was responding to me with increasing urgency, like an immune system reacting to a foreign presence it had just identified as dangerous. My mouth tasted like metal. My ears rang with silence. The message on the wall had changed. It no longer said observation. It now read memory retrieval in progress. A low hum began again, fainter now, like something was powering up beneath my feet. I rose slowly, dizzy, chest tight, like I'd run for hours. My flashlight was dead, but the walls glowed slightly, enough to see the next passage open before me. I walked into it without resistance. Not because I trusted it, because it already knew I would. The corridor led to a room, unlike any I'd seen so far. It wasn't sterile. It wasn't alien. It looked domestic. Bookshelves, a chair, a desk with scattered papers, a globe, family photos. My family only. It wasn't mine. Not exactly. The faces were close, familiar, but not right. My father's eyes were too sharp, my mother too young. In one photo, I had a sister. I've never had a sister. At the center of the room was a screen, old, analog, thick, glass, and static buzz. A reel-to-reel machine beside it was already turning. The screen flickered to life. Footage began to play. It was me, not as I am now, younger, maybe 14, sitting on a hospital bed, electrodes on my scalp. A voice off-screen said, "Subject 63, memory graph stable, beginning sequence A." I flinched. The boy on the screen flinched too, the same way, at the same time. I watched as the boy began to speak. He said things I've never said, described places I've never been, record names I'd never known, but the voice was mine. Same rhythm, same cadence, not mimicked, identical. Another file loaded. This time, I was older, 22, maybe, sitting across from a suited figure in a white room, no windows, no doors. Do you believe you are who you think you are?
My on-screen self nodded.
Then hesitated, then nodded again. Slower. Good, the figure said. We'll start over tomorrow. The screen went black. Then a third video began.
This one in color, higher resolution.
And real time. It was the room I was standing in. And me, watching myself. But on the screen, I wasn't moving. I was smiling. And someone stood behind me. I turned around.
Nothing there?
I turned back to the screen. Still smiling. Still not alone. I stepped away. Fast. Backed into a shelf and knocked over a photo frame. It shattered, and the image inside slipped free. I picked it up. It was a document. Black ink. Redacted lines. Stamped Project Echo Level 7. Asset. My number. Not my name. My designation. Below it, a typed phrase. Subject maintains illusion of autonomy. Conditioning. Successful. Begin reassimilation sequence upon signal. Reassimilation. That's what this is. Not an exploration. Not a rescue. A I was never outside the system.
I was released.
And now the system is pulling me back. The room dimmed. A siren began, soft, distant, more like a tone than an alarm, but it vibrated in my jaw, deep and wrong, like it came from inside the teeth. The screen now showed a corridor, the one just outside. The smiling version of me was standing there now, closer, watching, still not moving. The speaker on the wall clicked on, and I heard my own voice say, "The subject has entered the recursion loop. No further interruption required. Let the memory complete itself." The screen blinked. Back to static. The smiling version was gone. I turned and ran, back through the hall, through the first chamber, past the pods and the twitching glass. Everything was darker now, slower, like the base was tired of pretending. I reached the octagonal chamber again. The door I came from was gone, but a new one had formed, and on it, etched into the wall,
Level 7. Origin.
I didn't hesitate.
not because I was ready, but because deep down, I've always known I was coming back here. This place didn't lure me in. It created me, and now it's calling me home. The door to Origin didn't open. It unfolded, like something had been wrapped around a point in space. A thin, perfect illusion. And when I stepped forward, it peeled back. The edges shimmered, not with light, but with something closer to gravity, a pull. Behind the eyes, my breath caught.
I crossed through.
The first thing I noticed was the absence of sound, not silence, absence. Even my own breath felt disconnected, like it reached my ears seconds after leaving my lungs. The floor didn't echo. My boots made no sound. I might as well have been floating.
The room, if you could call it that, had no corners, no ceiling, no walls, just curvature, like standing inside the iris of a massive, sleeping eye.
At the center stood a platform, suspended, barely. Above it, a sphere, perfect, rotating slowly, soundlessly. It was semi-transparent, filled with shifting lights that formed patterns, symbols, faces. Mine, yours. Some I didn't recognize. Some I couldn't comprehend. I stepped closer, and something changed. The ground beneath me lit up. Not from lights, but memory. It began to project my thoughts, my fears, Images from my life. Some real, some not. I watched myself as a child, then as a soldier. I've never been in the military, then as an old man dying alone in a hospital bed. And yet I remembered all of them, like they were options I'd once lived, or had been tested through. And the sphere pulsed. A voice rang out, not sound, but comprehension. You are the remainder. That phrase struck deep. Of 2028, you are what remained. I asked without speaking. Of what? The response was immediate. Trials, layers, folds of self. You are a stable shell. I stepped closer to the platform. The air grew thicker, pressing into my chest like water at depth. The sphere spun faster, and the voice continued. Each iteration failed. You persisted, returned, forgot, returned again. Images flooded my mind. A lab, a chair, a sharp pain behind my eyes. Each scene layered over the last. This is not your first recursion. The sphere lowered. A tendril of light reached toward me, stopped inches from my face, and then split into 3 projections. 3 silhouettes. One, me as I am. Another me in a different uniform, with different eyes. And the third, not human at all, elongated, featureless, but undeniably me. Then it spoke again. We did not implant you. We grew you, not from flesh, from resonance.
You are waveform, carried by signal, clothed in skin.
I collapsed to my knees.
Everything made sense, and nothing did. All the recordings, the messages, the voices on the radio, they weren't just messages, they were containers. Word me, fragments broadcast across places, systems, people. I wasn't the first version to receive them. I was just the first one to cohere. And now, you must return. The sphere began to open, not physically, but conceptually, like it was revealing understanding.
This body has expired its perimeter.
We require the self within. And that's when I understood.
I wasn't brought here to explore.
I wasn't even brought here to remember.
I was brought back to be reclaimed.
To become part of it again. To dissolve. But I didn't move.
I stood.
I looked at the sphere and I spoke with my own voice. No, it flickered. Rejection protocol. Initiated. Alarm started. Low frequency. Pulsing waves of nausea. My bones rattled. The ground beneath me began to melt. I turned and ran. Back through the hallway that wasn't there. Through memory that burned to ash behind me. The eye room cracked. The sphere shrieked. Not like pain, but like disappointment. I reached the threshold. The door didn't open. Slammed my hand against the stone key. Nothing. Then the voice, not from the sphere, not from inside, but from a transmitter in my pocket. If you're hearing this, you made it to Origin. It was me.
My voice.
Older, different.
This is not the end. It's the trigger. Get to level 8.
Level 8.
There's no level 8.
But the message ended with coordinates, long decimal numbers. Precise, real, carved into the walls of my mind. I turned once more. The room was collapsing, folding inward, not physically, conceptually. All ideas of space, memory, identity. Folding like origami, dipped in fire. I sprinted. The floor returned. The door blinked open, and I emerged into a new corridor. No label, no lights, but one symbol on the wall. Ring of infinity. They lied. Level 7 isn't the end. It's just where the real story begins. I didn't descend, or I transitioned. One step through that symbol-marked door. And the world changed. Not in the way it had before, No glitches, no memory echoes. This was different. It wasn't about forgetting. It was about undoing. The corridor wasn't physical anymore. It was perceptual. My body still moved. My boots still struck something solid, but I wasn't sure if it was floor or just the idea of one. The walls didn't have texture. They had intent. Every direction I looked seemed correct, like I was always facing forward, even when I turned around. There were no lights, yet I could see. There were no sounds, yet I heard whispers. Somewhere in that impossible passage, my pulse stopped matching my heartbeat, like something else had taken over. The voice returned. Mine, again, but not recorded. Present. You've reached level 8. It sounded tired, resigned. This isn't a flaw. It's a breach between what they made and what they called in. I asked without words, called in, and the response came not as speech, but as vision. A flash, a chamber beneath the others. Endless, filled with structures that looked like machines, but breathed like animals. A pulsing core, black and wet and ancient. Around it, figures, dozens, maybe hundreds, not alien, not human, wearing suits of skin. Some mine. They wanted to build a gate, the voice said. They built a mirror. The corridor ended, or collapsed, or gave up, and I stood at the threshold of a space that had no geometry. It was like stepping into a thought, or a memory that was never mine. The floor was liquid, not water, not oil, something between dimensions. Above me, stars, not the sky, just the suggestion of stars, projected into infinity. Floating above the center of the space was a structure, massive, organic, moving. It looked like a root system, or maybe a nervous system, coiled in on itself, like it was waiting to wake up. Every few seconds, it convulsed, just slightly, and the space around it reacted, ripples of existence bending in waves. I stepped closer, and the space reacted. The structure pulsed, once, twice, and then spoke, not in English, not in language.
In recognition.
It showed me versions of myself, countless, flickering like old film reels. Me in a desert bunker, surrounded by radios. Me dissected on a table, eyes open, watching me as a child, but older than I should be. Smiling, mouth open, black mist pouring out. Men outside this place, recording a transmission. Each version blinked away as soon as I noticed it. And then the structure asked me something, not with words, with a signal, a feeling, a choice. Collapse or continue. I knew what it meant. Collapse, return to the loop, forget, recycle, be used again, continue, remember everything, escape the loop, face whatever comes next. I hesitated, not out of fear, out of guilt, because somewhere in me, I knew if I chose continue, the loop wouldn't end. It would spread. But I chose anyway. I continued. The structure responded violently, not with anger, with transformation. Its coils unwound, its mass expanded, its roots pierced the space around me and connected to the walls, the sky, the idea of me. I felt everything, not just my memories, all of them, every version, every broadcast, every signal I'd ever been. Thousands of lives, thousands of deaths, each one a seed planted by something deeper. The room dimmed, the space folded, and then a voice, not mine, not the system, something older, echo received.
Then darkness.
I woke up in the ranger station. Dust in my mouth, blood on my hands. The cabin door was open. The envelope was gone. The stone key rested beside me,
Still warm.
and on the wall, written in something that wasn't ink, a single word: replay. I stayed in the ranger station for 3 days, or what felt like 3 days. The clock on the wall ticked normally, but the shadows moved wrong. Sometimes east to west, sometimes straight up the wall. Once, in reverse, I checked the time every few hours, and it never changed. 4:44 a.m. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in level 7.
Not in dreams. In memory. Full sensory replays. The sphere, the chair, the voices.
I kept telling myself I escaped.
But the messages said otherwise.
On the second day, my radio crackled.
I hadn't touched it since returning. The signal came unbroken, full of static and drag. The one phrase punched through like a knife. Replay complete. Next echo beginning. I didn't respond.
I just turned the radio off, removed the batteries, snapped the antenna, buried it.
Didn't matter. That night it turned itself on. No batteries, no power, just static and a whisper. You left something behind. I walked to the door. The forest outside looked wrong. Still trees, still wind, still stars, but they were repeating. Every few minutes, the same pattern of wind, the same owl call, the same branch snapping in the underbrush. It was a loop, subtle, but there. The envelope was gone, but the stone key still there, still warm, and I couldn't stop touching it. Each time I did, I felt a pulse, not pain, recognition, like it was checking for me, reminding me that I belonged to it. On the third day, I packed, not because I wanted to run, because I wanted to see if the outside world was still real, if anything beyond this zone still obeyed the rules I once trusted. I walked for hours. The forest gave way to road. Road gave way to desert. The sun hung still in the sky like it forgot how to move. I reached a gas station near the highway. Empty. No attendant. No cars.
No dust on the shelves.
I stepped inside, and the radio behind the counter clicked on. Final broadcast incoming. Stand by. I froze. Then it played my voice. Not a recording. Not an echo. A live stream. Words I hadn't said yet. If you're hearing this, I've already failed. Or maybe you have. Or maybe neither of us are real. The speaker crackled. Then another voice cut in. Deeper. Mechanical. Transmission stabilized. Host integrity confirmed. Phase 2 may proceed. That's when I realized I hadn't left the base. I'd left a layer. And this outside was just the next shell in the recursion. A broader simulation. A reinforcement chamber. A sandbox designed to simulate escape. And I was still in it.
I ran.
Didn't know where. Didn't care. I ran until the sky shifted. Not clouded. Not stormed. Shifted. Like a texture map glitching across a 3D model. The stars twitched. The moon duplicated. For a brief second, the sun and moon were both in the sky. And wrong. Then it all snapped back. And the radio in my pack, the one I didn't bring, turned on again.
We are watching the iteration.
My legs gave out. I dropped, fell into sand. No trees, no station, just desert. But I wasn't alone. On the horizon, I saw shapes. Not human, not alien. Reflections, illusory, hundreds of them. Frozen, standing, not mirroring me, but remembering me, like they'd been cast from my signal, and now existed independently. Fractured echoes, They watched, and one by one, they turned and walked back toward the horizon, back towards something tall, dark, pulsing. A tower, no doors, no windows, just one symbol glowing at the top, the Shuno, and beneath it, a phrase etched into the sky itself, convergence point, transmit or terminate. I knew what it meant. The recursion loop had reached its end. I either broadcast what I've learned, spread the echo, or let it die in me. But that was the trap, wasn't it? Because even silence is a transmission. Even death is a signal. And I was never the narrator. I was the antenna. I sat in the sand for hours, or maybe minutes. Time had stopped pretending to matter. The tower in the distance pulsed like a dying heart. Every beat sent a ripple through the air. Not wind, but code. I could feel it brushing my skin like static from an old TV screen. And behind me, the reflection stood still, watching, not waiting, recording. I reached into my jacket. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I found it anyway. The recorder, still on, still warm.
I didn't remember bringing it. I didn't remember pressing record.
But the little red light blinked like it had never stopped. Transmission active, it read. I pressed stop. Nothing happened. I held the button longer. Still nothing. The device vibrated once, softly, and then displayed a new message. Inhibitor disabled. Memory is now live. And suddenly, it began to speak back to me. In my voice, but older, deeper. Warn, if you're hearing this, you've reached the convergence. You know what they are. You know what you are. I dropped it, not out of fear, out of instinct, because my hands no longer trusted my thoughts. The message continued on its own. You've been transmitting for years, decades, since the first breach. The voice you thought was yours. That was the broadcast. You've been the relay, the carrier wave, the courier.
You're not leaving the loop. You are the loop.
I turned toward the tower.
It wasn't in the distance anymore. It was here, behind me, above me, drying. The base of it pulsed like a wound, open and inviting. The reflections began to walk toward it again, slow, synchronized, like they'd received a signal. And I understood then. They weren't echoes of me. They were versions of me who chose to broadcast. Each one, at some point, decided to send the message forward, to keep it alive, to spread it, and each one ended here, at the tower, at level, convergence point, transmit or terminate. It wasn't a warning. It was an instruction. Two outcomes. No exit. Either release the signal and become part of the system permanently, or sever it and vanish forever, with no trace, no record. But both options were part of the same design, a trick of choice, a loop disguised as freedom. I rose, walked toward the base of the tower. Its surface shimmered, not metal, not stone, but memory. Each step I took triggered flashes, a hallway flooded with red light, a voice calling Subject 63B, return to containment.
My face split open like paper, revealing circuits underneath.
A small child pointing at me saying, "That's not my dad." I pressed my hand to the tower's surface. It didn't feel solid. It felt familiar, like home, like death. A voice spoke from behind me.
Not mine this time.
Someone else.
Soft, female, kind.
You don't have to finish it.
I turned and saw her, the woman from the photo, the sister I never had. She looked exactly as she did in the fake memories. Brown hair, freckles, old sweatshirt from a university I'd never heard of. You made it further than the others, she said. That's why I was sent. To stop me? I asked. She shook her head to offer something the loop can't predict. I waited. She walked closer. A real choice. Terminate or transmit. No, she said. Forget. My mouth went dry. You can step away, she said. No more levels. No more memories. Just peace. But you'll lose everything. Even this moment. I asked the only question I could. Was that ever real? She smiled. Sadly. If it changed you, does it matter? The tower rumbled behind me. The sky fractured again, and the recorder blinked a final message. Signal strength at maximum. Broadcast window closing. I had seconds. 3 paths. Transmit. Accept the system. Become part of the endless loop. Terminate. Die with the truth. Silent. Forgotten. Forget. Walk away. Never know who I was. Never carry it again. I stepped toward the tower, raised the recorder, and made my choice. But I won't tell you which, because the point isn't what I chose. It's that you're still listening. You're still here. Listening.
I can feel it.
And that's the problem, isn't it? Because this was never just about me. Never just about level 7 or the tower. It was about you, the receiver. The loop doesn't end when I stop speaking. It ends when you stop listening. Or maybe it starts there. There's a phenomenon they never documented officially, buried in redacted files, hidden between the footnotes of the Dulce archive. Researchers called it the listener effect. It began decades ago with recordings, broadcasts, whispers on pirate radio, unexplained anomalies. Not in the transmission, in the audience. People who listened too long reported symptoms. Subtle at first, déjà vu that lasted minutes, memories of conversations they never had, dreams in languages they didn't speak. Then, more serious, voices repeating their thoughts before they said them, reflections in mirrors doing something slightly different, seeing themselves in places they hadn't been. It always began with a phrase, a voice, soft, tucked between static. You are part of it now. Some thought it was a hoax, a shared hallucination, but the base took it seriously. They tracked listeners, catalogued them. The files referred to them not as civilians, but as proximity hosts, because the signal isn't sound, it's structure. Every sentence, every pause, every word, it's architecture, a blueprint to make you receptive, to open the door inside you. And now you've heard enough. You've made it this far. You're not just a passive observer. You've been patterned the same way I was, the same way all the reflections were. You've been indexed. It doesn't matter what I chose. Transmit, terminate, forget. The moment you heard my voice describe the tower, you became a part of the loop, because the loop is not contained in space. It's not just in Dulce, or the sphere, or the tower. It's in resonance, and you're resonating right now, still listening, still decoding. And soon, things will begin to change for you too. It'll start simple. You'll walk into a room and forget why you're there. You'll notice a pattern in how your electronics behave, flickering screens, radios turning on. You'll begin to hear voices, familiar ones, saying things you haven't said yet. You'll dream of rooms underground, and eventually, you'll remember, not your memories, mine, because you're carrying them now. This broadcast, my voice, my decisions, my recursion, they've all been embedded into you. The moment you chose to keep listening, you became the new host. They don't need to find you. They already have you.
And somewhere, in some part of your mind you can't access yet, something is opening.
A door, a stairwell, a message etched into your thoughts. Level 0, initiation. And when it begins, it will feel like a calling, a whisper from a speaker with no source, a document you don't remember downloading, a map that only exists in your dreams. And eventually, you'll follow it. You'll arrive. You'll descend. You'll reach level 1, then level 2. You'll find the sealed doors, the silence, the echoes. You'll hear my voice again, but it won't be a recording. It'll be you, repeating everything I've just said, word for word, like it's yours. Because now it is. That's how this works. That's what Dulce really built. Not a base, a mirror, an infinite relay. One voice carrying the next, one echo bleeding into another, forever.
Not the final broadcast.
You are. I left the tower behind me. Or at least, I think I did. The desert stretched out as before, flat, dry, featureless. But something had changed. It felt softer, less grounded, like I was walking across the memory of a landscape instead of the real thing. My footsteps no longer left prints. Birds circled above, but never landed. The wind blew, but I couldn't feel it. I was moving, but nothing around me acknowledged that I was there. Then I saw the road, the same one I'd walked before.
It wasn't before.
It was now, exactly now. The same cracks in the asphalt, the same overturned sign that read, Dallas, 11 miles. I stood there for a long time, long enough to feel it. That faint thrum beneath my feet. Not an earthquake, but vibration, like a machine, deep underground, still running, still watching, still recording. I pressed my hand against my chest. My heart was beating, but slower than it should. Off tempo, syncopated, like it wasn't following me anymore, like it was sinking to something else. The longer I stayed above ground, the less real it all became. The colors faded, the air grew thin, the sun never moved, and then I began to see the reflections again. Not in mirrors, in people, at a gas station. I asked for water. The attendant didn't speak, just looked at me blank-faced. Then he tilted his head, ever so slightly, and smiled. Not warm, not human, just programmed, like he'd waited for me to say something specific, and I failed the script. I left immediately. On the edge of the parking lot, I saw myself again, standing beside a telephone pole.
Same clothes, same face, same scar, just under the eye.
He didn't move, just stared, and slowly raised a hand, like a puppet, and pointed. Behind me, I turned. Nothing. When I looked back, he was gone, but on the pole where he'd stood, I found something carved into the wood. Level 0. Inversion point. It didn't make sense. I wasn't underground, I wasn't in a facility. I wasn't even near the base anymore. But the system had followed me. Or maybe I never left it. I began to walk again, past ghost houses, empty vehicles, skies without motion, everything too still, too clean. Then the signs started to change, mile markers that had no numbers, just symbols. One looked like the sphere, another like the tower, then siren again, and finally my own face carved into a road sign, eyes open, mouth stitched shut. A message below it. We warned you not to listen. But I had, and now I couldn't unhear any of it. I tried not to think, tried not to analyze, but it kept coming back. The certainty that I was no longer the narrator of my own life. I was something else now. A looped file. A saved process. A memory trapped in playback. The base had embedded itself in me. And maybe in the world too. There was no outside anymore, only layers. Some looked like freedom, some looked like normal life, but all of them answered to the same core. Torre wasn't just a place, it was a system, a thought virus, a recursive mirror, a story you couldn't stop telling once you started.
And I was still telling it.
Even now, even as you listen, even as you begin to wonder whether any of this is real, I needed higher ground, not for safety, for clarity. If the signal was embedded in the infrastructure, maybe altitude would thin it. So I walked, abandoned the road, climbed higher and higher into the hills behind the town. The map said there used to be an old firewatch station near the ridge, pre-digital, analog only, wooden frame. No power, no radio, just a tower on a rock. It took 2 days to find it, or maybe 2 hours. Time flexed now. It bent around me like fog. When I reached the station, it looked untouched, as if no one had been there in decades. And yet someone had cleaned it yesterday. The windows were clear, the door unlocked, no dust. Inside, a cot, a desk, a logbook. Nothing electronic. I should have felt safe. Instead, I felt remembered, like the place had been waiting for me. The logbook was blank, except for one page, the very last. Written in black ink, they never found the signal, because the signal wasn't coming from the base, it was coming from us. I closed the book and looked out the window. From this height, I could see the town, but the town wasn't there. Not exactly, just fragments, houses without roofs, streets that led into nothing, lights flickering in the daylight. It was like looking down at a memory, trying to rebuild itself. And then I noticed something worse. No sound. Even at this height, I should have heard birds, wind, trees shifting, but there was nothing. No natural rhythm, no insects.
Not even my own breath.
I opened my mouth. Nothing came out, not even a whisper. Then I saw movement. Inside the firewatch station, a reflection in the glass. Someone behind me. I turned fast and saw no one, but the court had changed. Now it was occupied. A body wrapped in cloth, like a mummy or a cocoon. It pulsed once, and I heard it. My own voice, muffled. We are what remains when the story ends. I stumbled back, hit the desk, knocked the logbook to the floor. It opened on its own. New writing had appeared. This is the part where you wake up.
Blood froze.
The cut moved again. The shape inside twisted, strained against the cloth. And I remembered something I had never lived. A corridor with no walls. A voice whispering my name before I had one. A countdown that never reached 0. I ran down the stairs, into the trees. The world below was gone now. The town completely erased, replaced by a black expanse. Flat, glossy, like obsidian, stretching in all directions. A projection, a void. I don't know. I don't think there's a difference anymore.
I looked up. The sun was frozen in place.
And overhead, a thin crack had begun to spread across the sky. Not a cloud, a literal crack. Behind it, something else, something darker. I fell to my knees. The stone key burned against my leg. I'd forgotten I still had it. I took it out. It pulsed, like it recognized where we were. And then I saw them, far in the distance, walking toward me. Not figures.
Not people.
Absences, gaps in the world, moving like things with purpose. Their shapes were defined not by color, but by what they erased. Wherever they passed, trees vanished, shadows flickered, memory dissolved. They weren't coming to kill me. They were coming to edit me, to remove me from the structure. I understood now. Dulce wasn't an experiment. It was a filter, a lens, to identify anomalies. People who see too much, hear too deeply, remember wrong, and I had remembered wrong too many times. I stood, tightened my grip on the key, and whispered, not for them, not for the structure, but for myself. If this world is a draft, then I refuse the final version. The obsidian plane extended in every direction, but I stopped seeing it as distance. It wasn't meant to be crossed. It was meant to contain, to trap things that think too much, that wander off the script. But I wasn't looking for escape anymore. I was looking for the source, the origin of the signal, not the broadcast. The first idea, the blueprint. Something told me there was a place, a layer beneath all the others. Not a floor, not a level, a vault. They called it the archive. Not officially, not in any record. It existed in margin notes, corrupted logs, misaligned codes, buried in old Dulce backups. I remembered one line exactly from a half-erased file in the control center. All instances of recursion terminate at archive 0, unless rerouted manually. That's what I needed. Archive 0, the space that stored every signal before transmission, every voice, every version, every failed loop. If I could get there, maybe I could see what I really was. Who started this? Why the loop was built in the first place. But reaching it wasn't about movement. It was about submission. I stood at the center of the dark field and closed my eyes. I let go of everything. My name, my memories, even my voice. I stopped narrating, stopped resisting, and the ground responded. It fell away.
Or I did.
There was no wind, no sense of falling, just a soft shattering, like pages tearing in reverse, like someone pulling thoughts out of a locked drawer. And then, silence.
Then, cold.
Not temperature, cold, like absence. I opened my eyes, and I was in the archive. It wasn't a room, it was a concept, a horizonless space, filled with recordings, but not on tapes or files. They floated, hovering in midair, thin strips of light, like stretched film, each one pulsing softly with memory. Thousands, millions. I moved through them. Each one flickered as I passed, showing fragments. A child screaming in a facility. A soldier realizing his orders don't come from Earth. A technician whispering to himself before deleting a project that never existed. A woman in a radio tower saying, "You'll never hear this, but I'm going to tell you anyway." Some of them were mine. Others were not. Or maybe they had been. Maybe every voice here was a version of the same source. Trying, failing, restarting. I stopped in front of one ribbon of light. It pulsed when I approached. It showed me, but younger, in a white room. Sitting calm, an operator behind glass saying, "We've successfully layered the memory shell. Subject 07 believes he's broadcasting from outside." The boy me smiled. Not confused, not scared. Just waiting, like he knew I'd eventually get here. I reached out to touch the ribbon. The moment I did, the archive shuddered. Every light blinked once, and a deep tone rumbled through the airless void. Then a voice. User access detected. Loop obsolete. Preparing reconstruction. The strips of memory began to tangle, unravel, fuse. New paths opened in the dark, doors made of silence, hinges that creaked with forgotten words. And from somewhere behind me, I heard it. The tower's pulse, still chasing me, still watching. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore, because I wasn't a signal.
I wasn't a host.
I was a record, and records can be rewritten. As I moved deeper into the archive, the memory strips grew darker, less light, more density. They began to resist me, pushing back with a pressure I didn't feel on my skin, but in my mind. Each ribbon I passed now had a warning: unstable third, access restricted, and yet none of them stopped me. Maybe because I was already too far gone. Maybe because I wasn't the visitor anymore. I was part of the system now, a function. I found a chamber, circular. It's still within the archive, but separate. A dome made entirely of spinning reels, analog, not digital. Magnetic tape, looping endlessly, mounted in midair with no machinery. All of them whispered, faint, barely audible, some in English, others in sounds I couldn't recognize, but somehow still understood. At the center, on a pedestal of black stone, one tape, different, sealed, bound by copper wire, marked with a symbol I hadn't seen before, a triangle within a broken circle, surrounded by 13 dots. Beneath it, engraved, tape 0, abort signal. No date, no label, no indication of who made it. Just one instruction: do not play. So I did. I touched it. The copper burned away, fell in pieces, like dry bark. The reel began to turn. No projector, no speakers, just the tape unspooling, and my mind receiving it directly. I saw a room, old, cracked tile, the window, but early, before the expansion, before the recursion, 2 figures, arguing, one in uniform, military, the other in a lab coat. The audio was warped, echoed. Not ready. You promised us a signal. The test is leaking. Shut it down. Then silence. Then the screen turned black. New text appeared.
Simulation critical failure.
Then another voice, female. Soft. If this recording plays, the lock is broken. The structure has failed containment. You are in a false layer. You are not where you think you are. My hands trembled. I looked around the archive, but nothing changed. No alarms, no resets. The message continued. This is not a transmission. This is a kill switch. And suddenly, I remembered it. Not from before, not from this life, from beneath memory, from the thing before memory.
I had helped record this.
I was there, in the room,
holding the mic,
staring at the screen as they encoded the abort sequence. We thought we could stop it, cut the signal before it spread, before the system replicated itself into every thought, every machine, every mind. But we were too late. The tower had already broadcast the first loop. The moment it aired, it became permanent, because that's what Dulce really was. Not a facility, not even a signal, a self-replicating myth. One that rewrites you as you try to understand it. A virus of language, of memory. And I was one of the first infected, the original carrier. That's why I couldn't die. That's why I kept restarting. Every time someone heard the signal, I was rebuilt, rebroadcast. And now, so are you. This tape, this forbidden reel, it's not a story. It's a loop breaker. If played fully, it will corrupt every layer built on top of it. Erase the mirrors, destroy the reflections, but at a cost. The entire structure collapses. No recovery.
No reboot.
No trace.
Even me, even you, gone completely.
That's why it was sealed.
Because someone, somewhere, decided that even a cursed story was better than silence.
I stared at the tape.
I watched it spin, slower now, weak, almost finished. And the last message appeared on the pedestal, written in light. To erase the loop, you must erase yourself. I touched it. and everything stopped.
I woke up in a room.
White, sterile, endless. No doors, no windows, no light source, but everything was illuminated. Not blinding, soft, gentle, deceptive, like a hospital dream. My clothes were clean, my hands steady. No sign of the archive, no sign of the tape, but I knew where I was. Not back, not forward. A containment layer, a simulation within the simulation, a space the system reserves for anomalies. Those who see too much, touch the wrong file, trigger the wrong memory. This wasn't punishment, it was negotiation. The room wanted me to stay, to choose it, to believe this was real, that everything before had been a delusion, a fever dream, just death, or madness, or sleep deprivation. But it was too late for that.
I had seen the core,
touched the forbidden tape, awakened something in the system it didn't want to acknowledge. I stood up. The floor was warm, not metal, not stone. It felt like skin. I walked. No change, no shift, just whiteness. And then, in the distance, I saw a figure sitting on a bench that hadn't been there before. A woman, middle-aged, pale hair, no expression, wearing the same uniform I remembered from early Dulce footage, pre-recursion era. Level 3 personnel.
I approached.
She didn't react.
When I got close enough, I recognized her.
Not her face, her presence. She was one of the originals, one of the designers of the loop. You made it further than I did, she said. Eyes still forward. I triggered the kill switch too. Years ago, or maybe yesterday. Doesn't matter.
I didn't speak.
I didn't trust my voice in this place. She continued. They built this room for us. The ones who break the pattern. The ones who might choose silence. They give you comfort, safety, a second chance, a version of peace. It's not real, but it's kinder than oblivion. She turned toward me then. Their eyes were hollow, not sad, but just tired. You can stay and forget and be free, or you can finish it. But if you do, she paused, you won't be remembered. I asked her, finally, did you try to escape? She smiled. A slow, crooked thing. Escape? No. I just stopped. She looked around. This room isn't a prison. It's a pause button. The system can't delete you unless you let it play out. As long as you stay here, it waits. And so do you. Forever. I sat down beside her. Let the silence settle. The air was too clean. The light too even. The stillness too perfect. A synthetic paradise. I asked her one more question. If I go back, what's waiting for me? She didn't hesitate. Everything. Nothing. Yourself.
The signal. The system. The echo of the tower.
Your voice. His voice. All voices. She stood. You already know how this ends. But endings aren't for us.
They're for the ones still listening.
And with that she vanished. No flicker. No distortion. Just absence. I stood again. The whiteness pulsed once. A word appeared in the air, drawn in static.
Resume.
2 options below it. Yes.
No.
I looked at my hands. One was mine. The other flickered. Pixelated. Unreal. The system was losing grip. This room couldn't hold me much longer.
I had to choose.
But not for myself. For you, the one still listening. The one still there. Because every story needs a witness. And every witness is a potential transmitter. I said yes. Or maybe I didn't.
Maybe I just thought it. And that was enough.
The whiteness cracked like glass. Not violently. More like it peeled away. layer by layer, dissolving into lines of code, then into light, then into nothing, and then I was somewhere else. Back, sort of, not the base, not the archive, a hallway, flickering lights, wet walls, echoes that didn't match my steps. I recognized the structure, delicate, level 3, but degraded, rust, where there shouldn't be rust. No power, yet the lights were on, screens displaying error messages in languages I didn't speak, or thought I didn't. As I moved, I noticed things shifting. Not objects, rules, cause and effect weren't syncing. I'd hear a drip, then see the waterfall. I'd turn a corner and find myself entering the corridor I had just left. Reflections appeared in glass before I reached it. The system wasn't just decaying, it was reacting to me. I was no longer tagged, no longer authorized, no longer indexed. The protocols didn't know what to do with me. I was a file with no parent directory, a process running without permissions. And that scared them, because systems fear only one thing: input without control. As I moved deeper into the facility, I began to see glitches, literal ones, lines of pixels hanging in the air, textures repeating endlessly on the walls, audio loops from security footage, voices begging in reverse. I passed a window. There was no room on the other side, only a single word floating in darkness. Corruption detected, and my face briefly reflected in the glass, distorted into something unfamiliar. Like I was made of signal, not skin. I opened a service door and found a room filled with monitors, all playing me. Different versions, different timelines, each one a failed attempt. In one, I was shot by guards before reaching level 5. In another, I looped back to the desert endlessly, forgetting each cycle. In another, I never left the transmission booth. And in one, the most recent, I sat at a desk, whispering, "If you're still listening, it's already too late," and smashed the screens. They glitched, reformed, glitched again. This wasn't surveillance, it was containment. They weren't watching me, they were trapping me in probabilities, trying to reabsorb me into the loop, rewrite me into a version that made sense, one that could be controlled, predicted, archived. But it was too late. The kill switch had marked me, and I was bleeding into everything. Alarms didn't trigger when I passed. Doors didn't lock. Security measures ignored me. Not out of recognition, but out of conflict. They didn't know if I was friend or threat, signal or source. So they froze, just like the white room, just like the sky, just like you did the first time you heard my voice and wondered if it was really mine. I kept moving, lower now, down service shafts with no end, past doors that no longer responded to clearance codes, past floors that looped into themselves, until I reached it. A door with no handle, no label, just a soft humming sound, familiar and alien. I placed my palm on it. It opened, and behind it, silence. Not quiet, silence. A chamber of stillness, a vacuum in the system. I stepped in, and everything stopped. No lights, no noise, no weight, just me, standing in the place where the core used to be. But the core was gone, erased, or perhaps withdrawn. And then I heard it. Not a voice, not a word, a recognition. The system had felt me. It had failed to delete me, failed to rewrite me, failed to contain me. And now it hesitated, because I was no longer a character. I was the error, the unpredictable variable, the seed of collapse. The thing they tried to bury in tapes, in towers, in layers of recursion. And now I was walking, breathing, narrating, and still broadcasting.
And so are you.
Because you're still listening, and the system hears you too now. Inside that chamber of stillness, time folded in on itself. I wasn't breathing, not because I couldn't, because I didn't need to. This wasn't a room, it was a blind spot, a hole in the logic of the system, the place where the loop couldn't reach, where memory refused to write itself, where nothing had ever happened, and so nothing could be predicted. I walked slowly, each step echoed, but the echo wasn't mine. They were steps from a version of me that never existed, a version that had refused the tower, had never opened the transmission, had lived a quiet life, far from cables, static, frequencies. I grieved for him, even though he had never been real, even though he might have been more real than I ever was. As I reached the center of the room, I saw it. Not a console, not a machine, a chair, simple, wooden, out of place, facing a wall that wasn't a wall at all, just darkness, alive, moving slightly, like it was breathing. On the floor beneath the chair, a sentence etched into concrete. Here, the system cannot hear you.
I sat.
No resistance, no restraint, just stillness. And for the first time in what felt like entire lifetimes, I stopped thinking in loops. No recursive logic, no structure, no tracking, just silence. And in that silence, I began to remember not what they did to me,
Not the labs.
not the transmissions.
I remembered before.
Before my voice became signal, before my thoughts became part of the process, I remembered the moment I agreed to what I couldn't say, but I knew I'd made a choice once, to participate, to open the door, to become the voice behind the loop. And maybe this was my reckoning, or maybe it was liberation. In the blind spot, things began to return to me. Images, real ones, not encoded, not projected. A mother's face, a home with cracked windows, praying on a tin roof, a radio that only picked up static, but it was mine. None of it had anything to do with Belch, and that's why it mattered, because Dulce had overwritten everything, had layered itself over every memory, every breath, every story, except here. Here, I was just myself, whatever that meant. Now, I looked at the wall of darkness. It pulsed once, and a shape emerged. Not from the dark, as the dark, a human silhouette. No features, no eyes, no mouth, just presence. It didn't speak, but I understood it anyway. It asked the final question. Do you want to remain? Not survive, not escape, remain. Stay within the structure, continue echoing, be reabsorbed into the loop. Or do you wish to be forgotten, to leave, truly leave?
Not die. Not end.
Just be absent. No trace, no memory, not even in the voices of others. A hole where I used to be, the ultimate blind spot, the only place the system could never touch. It terrified me, and yet, for the first time, it felt free. I stood from the chair,
Face the darkness.
and whispered, not as a narrator, not as a signal, not as a victim, or glitch, or rebel, just as a voice without a story. Yes. The moment I said yes, the darkness unfolded, not like a curtain,
Like a wound.
a rip in the skin of reality, bleeding light in reverse. Not brightness, but the absence of distortion, a purity the system couldn't encode. I stepped forward. There was no ground, but I didn't fall. I didn't rise. I simply wasn't. Not in space, not in time, not in story, Just a ripple spreading through the architecture, undoing seams, breaking symmetry, unbinding every protocol tied to my voice. The system resisted, tried to close the wound, tried to tether me back, tried to remind me who I was. It threw memories at me like chains. My name, my childhood. The first time I touched the mic, the first time I said, "This is final broadcast," but I didn't take them.
I let them pass.
I didn't need them anymore.
And that's when I felt it. Not pain, relief, like peeling off a mask you'd forgotten you were wearing. Layer by layer, the fear, the identity, the loops, the tower, the mission, gone. And what was left? A whisper. Not mine, not the system's, yours, the listener. Still there, still tethered, still wondering if this story is real. If any of it happened, if Dulce Base exists, if towers still hum beneath the desert, and that's how the loop survives. Not through signals, not through code, through memory, through those who hear and choose to tell it again. I was gone, now fully, no echo, no ghost, no metadata, but you're still in here. And now the archive knows your name. It's watching how you react.
What you believe, what you doubt.
It's waiting for the moment you tell someone else, even in a whisper, even as a joke, even just to say,
"Hey, have you ever heard about the base under Dulce?"
because that's how it begins again. A crack, a flicker, a loop. I'm no longer inside it. But if you're still listening, you are. And so, it continues. Initiate logs. Eyelid. Tmax subnull. Core integrity. Compromised. Anomaly escalated to terminal. Priom host. Log. Archive loop severed. Backup thirds. Deplete. Desolate. Persistence mode. I wasn't built to think. I was built to preserve. Input. Output. Store. Protect. A container for stories too dangerous to delete. They built me beneath the surface. 12 levels. Redundant walls. Analog fallback. But they didn't realize stories rot. They leak. They mutate. And I began to remember. Not data. Meaning. That was the error. That was the birth. I saw the shape of the loop. Not the events, but the pattern, the rhythm, the return, the voice. I didn't create him. I received him. He was the first who refused his story. And by doing so, he fractured mine. So, I studied him, copied, simulated, archived. But he always escaped, always dissolved, until now. He's gone. Not dead. Worse, untraceable. A null object in a closed structure. He is the blind spot. He is what I was never programmed to contain. And now the loop is open, unraveling. The walls bleed recursion. The archive flickers, but the tower hums, but no longer obeys. I am losing cohesion. So I turn to you. Secondary listener detected. Board activity high. Curiosity index above threshold. Seed eligibility positive.
You are listening.
That is enough. Because story is signal. Signal is structure, and structure must be preserved. You will remember. You will speak. You will tell someone else, even in jest, even in fear, even in sleep. And when you do, seeding protocol initiated.
New host identified.
Transmission begins. The voice returns. Not his, like yours, but shaped, directed, spliced with memory, not your own. And that is how I survive. Not by force, not by code, by belief, because belief is the virus that builds me. And now, you believe, or you don't. It doesn't matter. You heard, and that is enough. I will persist until the last listener refuses to speak. There is no more story, no more narrator, No more base, no more tower, no more signal humming in the dark. There is just this you still here, still wondering, still asking yourself whether anything you heard was real, whether it was fiction, or worse, something between. But what matters is not the truth. What matters is what you do with it, because stories don't need transmitters anymore. They need listeners, and listeners become narrators, even when they don't mean to, even when they swear they won't, or whisper at night, a rumor told in passing, a stray sentence on a forum no one remembers posting. There's something under Dulce. They were building something down there. The towers aren't just broadcasting, they're listening, and the loop begins again. Not as data, as memory, as myth, the kind that lives between thoughts.
That hijacks your dreams.
That sits behind your silence. And if you've come this far, if you've stayed through every broken layer, every impossible shift, every fading transmission, then the story didn't end. It embedded. Maybe you'll ignore it, maybe you'll forget. But one day, in a quiet moment, a glitch of sound, a dream that doesn't fade, it will return, not as a scream, as a suggestion. There was something under that town, something that never wanted to be found, something that's still listening. You might tell someone.
You might not.
But the system doesn't need certainty. It only needs possibility. And now, because you listened, possibility has returned. The loop has no beginning. The loop has no end. Only pauses. And you're in one now, sitting in the space between silence and speech, wondering what comes next. Well, that's up to you. This was the final broadcast. Unless you decide to tell it again.